All right. So again, preparation. We haven't even gotten to touching the client. Ask yourself, why am I touching this client? What's my purpose, right? Is it to increase range of motion? Is it to get more postural alignment? Is it to increase functional participation in activities? Why am I touching this client? It's super important to know that, right? So that you're not randomly touching a person, but touching with a very clear idea of what you hope to accomplish. Second, am I present and attentive to my client? So, there's nothing worse than having someone touch you that is not actually paying attention to you and doesn't feel present. They're either on autopilot, or perhaps they're thinking about something else, their next client, something bad that happened, I'm hungry, whatever it is. And we owe it to our clients, hands down, to be present and attentive when we're working with them. So if you can't be present and attentive for whatever reason, it's not a value judgment. However, you don't want to enter into that intervention if you're not able to actually be there. And then finally, what is the client communicating to me about their current status? So that could be verbally or non-verbally communicating. But we absolutely want to be like with our little laser lights on our client to see what is it that they are sharing with us, even if they can't talk to us, right? All right, hand use. So hands are powerful things. They convey warmth, respect, and acceptance. Like shaking hands with somebody, right? Especially when you take their hand in yours with both of your hands. And the tension, position, placement, and movement of our hands can either facilitate those feelings of warmth, respect, and acceptance, or they can decrease them. I found this quote, I'm not sure where, but I thought it was really great. We touch through our hands as well as with our hands. So our hands are our tool as much as anything else is our tool to connect with our client, to convey acceptance and support and comfort and empathy and compassion. So we build trust through our hands. And so don't just, it's a, what do I want to say? It's a privilege to touch someone, and it's also a privilege to be touched. So I encourage you to not take it lightly. As you start touching clients, you'll probably be nervous, right? And in that case, it's really good to remember that they're nervous too, and that if you move slowly and with kindness and presence and compassion, you will do great. And also practice. All right. So we've talked a little bit about the more woo-woo aspects and emotional and psychological aspects of touch. And I don't mean woo-woo in a bad way, but just, we haven't even talked about, well, what is it actually doing, right? So it is contributing emotionally, psychologically, mentally to our clients' well-being. However, there's also a whole set of advantages and affordances that therapeutic touch conveys. It affects the central nervous system. So we're actually changing around our clients' nervous systems as we touch them. It can change muscle tone, and that's not a permanent change, but we can affect a change in muscle tone, which then enables the client to engage in functional activity and to make some more long-lasting changes. And this more with folks who are recovering than, say, with children with CP, right? We can change it somewhat, but that amount varies. Also, it can change a person's behavior. If we are touching in a way that is trying to lay down some new some new neurological pathways for motor behavior, we can actually start to change our client's behavior. Now, it takes a while and it takes practice on the part of the client. However, we can have that effect. It's pretty awesome. It also organizes the neurological system and affects the autonomic, reticular, and limbic system. So with the autonomic nervous system, there's a note, avoid activating the sympathetic response. So we want to activate the parasympathetic branch and actually calm and center our clients rather than sending them into a fight, flight, or fright response, right? Also, the reticular activating system, which is responsible for our circadian rhythms, our wake and sleep cycles, and to a great extent, maintaining homeostasis within our bodies. So touch can help with that. And finally, the limbic system. So we circle back around to those effects that are more psychological and emotional in nature, and the fact that we can have a big effect with regard to a client's emotions and psychological comfort. And, when people have sustained injuries or lived through illnesses and have conditions, we can't underestimate the importance of working with their mental and emotional state as well as their physical state, because we're connected through this thing called our neck, and our head and our bodies both need to be healing and recovering. Touch, as I've alluded to earlier, also conveys caring. So our technique is important and our intention is important. When we approach a client to touch them, we want to approach from the front and, in fact, just a little bit off center, right? So if someone is approaching me like this, it can seem a little confrontative. If we angle ourselves just slightly, we're getting into their visual field, which will alert them to our presence and the fact that something is going to happen, and it can be a little bit less confrontative. We want to get clients' attention, and visually and or verbally. We never want to approach from behind because that can be startling. And remember, in the previous slide, we said we don't want to activate the sympathetic nervous system. We don't want to activate fight or flight by coming up and tapping our client on their shoulder or something like that. So clients may or may not be able to actually see you. You want to be sensitive to that, but you want them to be aware of your presence before you touch them. Avoid startling your client by touching them unexpectedly. And the way to do that is to move slowly, let the client know what you're doing, and use a calm and confident tone of voice and something that is pitched so that they can hear it, but you're not actually agitating them. Here's some general guidelines, and we'll be practicing these in class. We'll actually be practicing most of this video and the techniques when we're in our lab. So we want to start off with soft hands. And what that means is that not that we're limp, right? But that our hands are responsive. When we get nervous, we tend to tense, right? And if you tense, you convey that tension to your clients. So we want to have soft hands. And furthermore, we want to have hands that will mold to the client's body. And I hope you can see this in the video. We want to, our hands are miraculous and they have so many joints. So we can either grab in ways that are uncomfortable, right? Either being too hard, too soft, too tense, or we can think about molding to the client's body. We want to be aware of our skin temperature. Are our hands freezing cold? Fingernail length. Are we poking our client? Any client pain that's experienced? Or any client discomfort or embarrassment that's being demonstrated. And I'm going to get rid of that. All right. And then we want to avoid digging or gripping. So digging is when we, I'll do it this way, when we press our fingers into our client's skin, right? Or into their muscles or into their bones. And when we're nervous or we're not quite strong enough to actually do what we're doing, we can be prone to gripping or digging. So digging is, pushing in too hard. Gripping is with the thumb that we're actually holding on too hard. So two related things. We want to avoid them both. Alrighty, come on you. Okay, there we go. All right. We also want to consider feedback from the client as we're touching them, and then modifying what we're doing based on the feedback that we're getting. And again, this might be verbal feedback, or it might be nonverbal feedback, right? So we want to think about how hard we're touching, the pressure, and the movement tolerance that the client has, and adjust accordingly. We want to take into consideration the skin integrity of the client. So some older adults have very fragile skin that's prone to bruising and also prone to tears. We want to, of course, consider client pain or discomfort. That is, in most cases, unless you're very skilled and you're engaging in something that has a level of intensity for a very particular purpose, and it is not going to damage the client, we want to avoid pain and discomfort as much as possible. And then, of course, we want to see the effect that our handling is having on the client and act accordingly to modify and revise what we're doing. There's a few additional considerations. The first is therapeutic use of self. So it's very important, and I've alluded to this, if not come right out and said it, that a trusting and solid client-therapist relationship is vital to our work with therapeutic handling and with intervening physically with clients. The relationship provides a powerful tool for therapeutic exchange. If someone believes in us and believes in our ability to help and feels comfortable and safe with us and trusts us, then that kind of catapults their potential for recovery forward. Also, we want to keep in mind that this therapeutic use of self is a dynamic exchange of energy between the client and the practitioner, and that the goal of that exchange is healing. We can demonstrate therapeutic use of self through energy. How animated am I? I tend to be a quieter person, but I can get really big if it demands it with a client who needs me to be really big and really animated and more of a cheerleader. Or I can get very quiet and have my energy really come down. My energy is still very focused on that client, but it's a quieter, more contained and constrained energy because the client cannot tolerate that big person. They need someone that is more contained. So our use of energy, of voice, as you said, of posture. So notice I can be back here, and I'm not sure how much you're going to be able to see this, or I can be right up in their face, right? And right here, getting their attention and interacting with them. Also, the emotion that I display or don't display, my breath, and anything that I say to the client can all be tools for therapeutic use of self. And let me know if you want to see that in person. Happy to oblige. All right. Another additional consideration is grading input. So we've graded activities, right, at this point, and now we're thinking about grading input. Consider if your client is hyper or hypo responsive to tactile input, to pain, to movement, which would be vestibular and musculoskeletal, to deep pressure and changes in body position, so bringing in our probe system, and act accordingly to either upgrade or downgrade the kind and type and intensity of the touch that you're using to accommodate what's up with your client. Pain bears mentioning just a little bit further. So if our client has a very low or high pain tolerance, and we're doing, we're working on breaking up some synergies and things like that, we want to really be aware of the pain tolerance and that it's higher than the typical individual, because we don't want to push past where it's safe for the client and beneficial to them. Alternately, if someone is experiencing more pain than the average individual, we're going to need to take that into account as we engage in our handling techniques. And finally, second to finally, we want to listen for feedback with our whole selves. So when we listen with our ears typically, right? But we also have to, quote unquote, listen with our eyes and our hands, because any of those three senses may be the thing that gives us information about feedback from the client. Is this technique working? Are they comfortable? What do I do next? So we want to balance intuition with assessment and thought. We want to wait for client responses and be patient. So new therapist pitfall is moving super quick because you're nervous and you'll want to get it done. And my suggestion to you is to pay attention to your breathing. And if you feel like you're moving too fast or you suspect you are, you don't have to breathe audibly, but take a breath in and let it out before you go on, right? So you're just sort of centering yourself and figuring out what's going on with your client. Attune to client facial expression. And as I said, it may or may not convey the obvious smile, frown, etc., but it will give you information that something is going on, and then you can check that something out. We also want to attend to muscle tone changes and other physiological changes in our clients. We want to identify responses to hand placement, firmness of pressure, direction of movement, and the frequency, speed, and duration of touch. So, in short, all the aspects of touch, we want to be tuned in so we can tell, what did I do and how did the client respond? Then finally, we adjust our touch or input or treatment based on feedback, and very much be willing to revise your plan if it's not working. Now, that's not the same as I touched somebody for 30 seconds and they didn't respond. Some treatments are going to take much longer, right? And they're going to require some more patience and some more getting in there and working with the client. So we're not advocating giving up before you see the therapeutic benefits of a treatment, but simply that if it's really not working and you are certain that it's not working, that you be willing to be flexible and revise your plan. And this is finally client-centered practice. So just a little reminder that we are working with our clients, not on our clients. And to that end, we want to maintain attitudes of respect, communication in whatever way they can communicate, collaboration with them, and build an attitude of trust. Along with that, obviously we need to work with the disabilities or conditions or challenges that a client is exhibiting, right? So if you've had a traumatic brain injury or a stroke or a spinal cord injury or any number of other traumatic events, these things may not happen in the same way as they would happen with an able-bodied, cognitively totally intact and emotionally well-balanced person. But it doesn't mean that it can't happen. It just needs to happen in a different way. All right. Thank you so much for listening. If you have questions, we can address them in class. And that's it. You've made it through Therapeutic Handling Basics. I will look forward to seeing you in lab, and we're going to do a whole lot more exploration as well as adding some NDT techniques and some PNF techniques. So stay tuned. Thanks very much, everyone. Have a great day. Bye-bye now.